How's it going today, YouTube? My name is Darcy, and today we're going to be breaking down the absolute basics of Escape from Tarkov. Oh, he's here, he's here. Yep, there's one more. There's one up here. Alright guys, so with the huge influx of new players that we have seen in the last few days, I've seen a lot of questions on Reddit, I've seen a lot of questions on Twitch, seen some stuff on Twitter, some Discords. There are a ton of questions being asked, and a lot of pretty basic and pretty simple things that still trip up new players. Completely understand, I was in the same position, so I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and do a bit of a series to introduce new players to Tarkov and give you a bit of a foot in on what direction you need to be going on certain things. So I think first thing first, getting into the game, obviously having settings to a position where you're going to be able to run the game smoothly is going to be very critical to you enjoying the game, and it's very critical to being able to be competitive in the game as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my settings here. Most of these settings are pretty much what everybody runs. I think there are a few settings that people will disagree on, and there are some things that you can do a little bit different, but this is what I have my settings set up to. I actually play on full screen, not borderless. I just have it on borderless right now so I can tab back and forth. The texture quality you can set to high or high plus texture streaming. Shadow quality, you can go high or ultra. Actually, kind of awkwardly enough, you get better frames with the higher settings in shadow quality. The LOD quality, always set to 2. That's where that stays. Overall visibility, you can try pushing it up or down a little bit depending on your frames. 2000 is pretty much the general consensus for the happy medium of being efficient for your frames and endgame. Shadow visibility, I have to 40. I think that's pretty much what most people run that have been playing the game for a while. Turn that all the way down. All that does is reduce the range which you have shadows visible. Anti-aliasing, TAA high or just TAA are what you want to stick with. You can try flipping back and forth, try a couple different things, see what works better for you. Resampling 1 times off, I think is pretty much what everybody runs. HBAO off, SSR off, anisotropic filtering off. Sharpness 0.7. I think that's what pretty much everybody runs. 0.7 seems to be the happy point. Lobby FPS limit I have turned all the way up to 60, as well as game FPS limit all the way up to 120. I don't think there's really any reason to turn those down. If your system can't handle or if it's overheating, it might be a good idea to benchmark it to a particular setting, but this is where I have it. Z-blur, chroma aberrations, and noise, and grass shadows, all off. They just make the game look a little bit weird and harder to distinguish things in the distance. The other things here are you can turn on the auto RAM cleaner. However, I use process lasso as well as memory cleaner to help use only the physical cores, so I'm not multi-threading, and I'm keeping my RAM usage low. Field of view, this is basically going to be up to you. I prefer to have mine at 60 as opposed to 75 because I feel like Tarkov is kind of weird in a stretched field of view up to 75. It makes objects in the distance harder to see. It makes long-range shots a little bit more awkward through iron sights or even particular red dots or reticles. Optics you don't really have an issue with, so any kind of scopes with the zoom don't have much of an issue with. However, iron sights and certain red dots do, I feel like, act weird. Head bobbing I turn all the way down just because I don't like to see my screen like shake side to side. The next big thing that I want to talk about, and a lot of this is going to be personal preference as well, so I think it would be a good idea to actually look through all of these different keybinds and see what would be comfortable for you. because depending on what game you come from or what games you've played, certain keybinds are just gonna feel better. Um, I couldn't even tell you what most of the default keybinds are, just because I've changed a lot of them. Um, so definitely take some time to look through here. The big ones that I would advise is to rebind your discard key, because having it all the way at delete feels really awkward to me if I'm trying to like quickly sort through my inventory after a big fight and I'm trying to uh, get my inventory organized so that I can get out of an area after a large skirmish and there's made a lot of noise and you know people are going to be coming pretty soon, so being able to get in and out quickly are very important. Having the discard to a button that's quickly accessible and easily accessible is important to me, so I put it to U, which is also right next to the Y key, which is your confirmation key. Outside of that, the only other keybind that I would honestly advise that you change is going to be the overhead fire mode. So if you're new to the game, you probably don't know, or maybe you've seen it in streams, maybe not. Most people don't really utilize the overhead blind fire or the right hand side blind fire. So if your character is behind a wall or something that's about head level, you can hold the gun up over your head and blind fire over the wall, or you can hold it out and around the wall. I changed it from Alt W because if I'm ever sprinting through an area and I just want to check my mag with Alt T or something, Alt B to check my fire mode, if you're holding W and walking and sprinting, it'll stop and do the overhead fire animation. It'll hold the gun over your head, which stops your moving, which is just an annoyance. Not something you have to do, but I would advise it. Outside of that, the rest of it's going to be kind of what you feel um, and how you like to have your keybinds set up. Another quick note, actually, I wanted to talk about with the keybinds thing. Getting into an inventory and seeing something like these that we haven't inspected yet, middle mouse button is a critical button here. You can just middle mouse something and it'll automatically inspect it. And as far as searching something, if you want to open a bag or vest inventory, you can double click on it and it'll show you the inventory. It didn't work here, but if we go into the character, double click it, it shows the inventory. So you don't have to spend so much time going here and then going open. Double click it, shows you the inventory. Double click it, shows you the inventory. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about quick is actually the traders. Coming into a game, just starting out the game, all of your traders are going to be level 1. Each one of these traders has different requirements to level up to the next loyalty level. So you can see here, for proper, to get to level 2, you have to be character level 15, you have to have 0.2 rep, and you have to have 1 million rubles spent with proper. We'll cover a little bit more of this in a future video probably, because you can somewhat, in a way, cheese it. It's not hard, it's just more of an annoyance. The money spent with traders is more of a money sink than anything. It's just, like I said, a slight annoyance. You have to spend a certain amount of money. You can buy and sell things either between traders or back and forth to the same trader, which, speaking of which, Ragman will end up being one of the harder ones to level, especially early in a wipe when you're not really getting any kind of armors, or you don't have a lot of bag space to carry random things, helmets, armors, even hats, things that you can sell to Ragman, because he basically only takes like the Comtacs and helmets. So the next thing with the traders is also going to be tasks. So we know there's a level requirement and then there's a reputation requirement. Well, how do we get reputation? We get reputation through tasks. Tasks are just quests. Some things you have to do in raid, some things you don't necessarily have to do in raid. Some quests are kill quests, like kill 5 scavs on customs. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But you also have to hand over shotguns, and it's got to be the MP133 shotguns. So there are certain things you will have to find in raid. I'll leave some links to the wiki. The wiki is very helpful for new players. It has everything you need to know on it. It's very clean, very straightforward. pretty easy to navigate, and I will leave links with subnotes for the things that I think are important for new players. The last thing I kind of want to talk about with the traders here is in terms of who is going to give you the best return or the best value for your items. Anything that is a jewelry or a med, Therapist is going to give you the best value for it. Therapist sells you all of your meds and things associated with that. So dog tags, rollers, bitcoins, anything that's a high value jewelry or med, Therapist. Therapist gives you the best value. Therapist is also the easiest to level, so you don't necessarily have to worry about selling stuff to her because you're pretty much naturally, unless you're insanely good from the beginning and you're not having to buy meds, you're going to level Therapist fairly easily just selling a few dog tags and buying meds from Therapist. Second person you want to sell to is Skier. Now, Skier won't buy completed guns, but he will buy a lot of parts, and he will give you the best value for those parts. After that, we go to Mechanic. Mechanic gives you the next best value for basically everything outside of clothing and armor, which is generally Ragman. All right, so kind of to close out the traders here and trading, I should say, the last thing that I want to talk about, and I had to jump over to my other account, my main account, just to show you guys this, because this is the flea market. The flea market does not become available to you until level 5. The flea market at level 5, you will be able to go into and you can search for any item in the game. And you can actually do this from your menu as well, from your stash as well. So you can go in, and if you have a particular item or a particular weapon, whatever, anything you want to search for, you can go right in here. You can right click and then go to filter by item. In here, this will show you anything that anybody is selling that is available for that item. Now here you can see that we can see Skier sells this muzzle brake, but he's out of stock, and that'll reset in 50 minutes, 49 minutes, 50 seconds. So the next best offer is going to be 36,500 rubles. These are real player transactions unless it specifies one of the traders. For some of these items, and also players can also put up barters, which are like trading, actual trading, not just cash currency, but so this guy has a trade up for 2 sugars. You can see it says approximately 6,978 rubles for this trade. Don't always trust this, but what you can do is see, so like, okay, packs of sugar, how much are pack of sugar, which you can't search while you still have that up. So we close that out, search up sugar, we can see packs of sugar. A lot of barter trades. Personally, I don't like to do barter trading, so what I do is go into the settings up here and remove bartering offers, hit OK, and now this shows me everything that's not a barter. What you can do as well is you can sort, and I advise you to do this because it used to not do this on every reset, and also the remove bartering options will disappear. You'll have to reselect that after every raid or after relogs. But sort by price, low to high, and now we can see these packs of sugar in here that are going to come up for sale. If you add an offer to the flea market, it will take 1 minute to post. So if you accidentally post something and you forget to add a 0 or you miss a number, whatever it is, you can go into your offers. So let's actually just go ahead and let's add an offer up. This magazine proper sells it for 1,834 rubles, but I want to go ahead and undercut that by 1 ruble, so I'm just going to go ahead just for the sake of the video and post it up for 1,833 rubles, and I add it. Now you can see there's a fee for everything that you sell. The farther away that you are from the average sell price of that item, the more the fee will be. And also the more expensive the item, the more the fee will be. You have to make sure that you have, and also remember that these rubles come out instantly. So we can see when I click place offer here, up in the top right, my rubles went down by 90 because it took that money directly out of my stash. Now, it doesn't show up here yet because I haven't refreshed, but I can see right here, this magazine is going to be posted in 45 seconds now. So I can go back over here to the browse, and if I refresh this, you can see right there, there's my offer. It's going to go live in 37 seconds, and then somebody will be able to buy it. I don't know if anybody's going to actually buy that, so I'll probably end up having to take it down. But we can also see up here that there is a rep. You gain rep for selling items on the flea market, and it's based on the value of the items. So initially you're able to post up to 3 items. If those offers expire and they don't get sold, your rep will go down, and you might only be able to sell 1 item if your rep goes down so much. But as your rep goes up, you're able to sell more items at the same time. You can also, if you wanted to sell, say, multiples of something, like if I have both of, let's say both of these lunch boxes, I want to sell both of those. So they're selling for like 15,000. Let's say I want to auto select similar items. So if I click on this lunchbox, it's automatically going to select all the lunch boxes that I have. Something else that's important to note with this is any items that have a durability value. If you auto select similar items, it will only auto select items with a similar durability. So like I have these packs of sugar up here. If I select the one, it'll only select the other ones with 70 out of 70 durability. If I select the one with 41 durability, it'll only select that one. 42 durability, it'll only select that one. So durability values do matter when you're selling in bulk. Most items that you sell in bulk probably won't have any kind of durability values though. So that's pretty much the flea market in short. It's definitely nice for once you hit level 5, if you're trying to build some decent weapons that you don't have access to the higher level traders for certain grips, buttstocks, handguards, even optics. Definitely nice to be able to go into the flea market and buy some of those items, or even armors and helmets. If you're really successful early in the game and you're not absolutely broke and you decide you want to start running some high-end loadouts, you can go into the flea market, buy that equipment from other players at a little bit higher price. And so the next thing I want to talk about is actually getting into a raid. Here we have an option for scavs or PMCs. Scav is a random loadout that you will get if you play the scav that is on a, I believe, 10-minute cooldown. That may have changed. I could be wrong. I believe it's a 10-minute cooldown from the time that your scav dies. Now, with the scavs, you will spawn into a map at a random time, anywhere from 3 to possibly, I believe, 30 minutes into the raid. I think the latest I've seen spawn in would be like 15 to 20 minutes left in the raid, which is still enough time to get in, find some things that you need to get, and get out. But you will never spawn into a raid that doesn't have at least one PMC player left. My opinion is to use these scavs to get loot to feed to your PMC. PMC is super brutal. It's very punishing. When you die, you lose everything unless you have it insured, which we will talk about in a moment as well. But scavs are just a great way to feed gear into your stash and onto your PMC to give you better opportunity to survive more raids and get more gear. So I advise you to run the scav run every time it's up as often as you can until you start to get a better handle on the game and get a little bit better survival rate. So the next thing we're going to look at is actually the maps. Now, currently there are 7 maps available. We have the lab, which is kind of the late game, pretty high loot, pretty hard. This has what they call raiders in lab, and the raiders are basically scavs on crack. The lab also requires a key card to enter, currently sitting at about 200,000 per key card, which is a single time use item to enter the lab on the flea market. Next we have Interchange, which is a shopping mall location. It has a 3-story, very large shopping mall. If you really want to consider it to be 3-story, really there's 2 stories with an underground parking garage that is just used to try to scoot around to avoid fights and enter and exit from the shopping mall. Interchange, in my opinion, would be a medium level map. Over here we can see this is the average raid time of 35 minutes. It says insanely hard. Don't necessarily follow these. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong, but I'm also not going to tell you it's right. I wouldn't say that Interchange is necessarily insane. It's actually one of the better maps to go into to loot, avoid conflicts, and get out with a very good amount of money. And then over here it also shows us 9 to 14 players. So the server looks to get at the very minimum 9 players in and at the maximum 14 players in the map for each raid. Next map is Customs. This is probably going to be the map that I would advise you to start on. This is where most of the initial quests take place, and it's just kind of an easy map since it's a pretty linear, fairly narrow map that directs you from one side to the other so that you can find your extracts, and it's pretty easy to decipher which side you spawn on and where you spawn. Next map we have is Factory. Factory is very small, very fast paced, and is probably one of, if not the hardest maps in the game. People call it the meat grinder for a reason. You'll run into extremely geared people. It's a 4 to 6 player map. Generally it's 6 players. Hardly ever do you see less than even 5. People that know this map will be on top of you within a matter of seconds. So I would advise you not to go to Factory until you have to for a quest, or unless you want to just play around in offline and test guns against the scavs. Next map we have is Woods. Woods is a more open, obviously wooded area. It's kind of horseshoe shaped. It's a very fun map in my opinion, but it's also kind of a little bit later game map. There will be some early quests that'll take you to Woods, and I think that's okay. My advice would just be to kind of avoid the conflict, because if you hear a lot of gunshots in the middle, it's probably not a good idea to go towards it. You'll probably get shot from range, and you'll probably have a bad time. It's a fun map. I do enjoy it. It just wouldn't be the map that I would advise new players to go to currently. Next map that we're going to look at is Reserve. This map is a pretty fun map in my opinion. It's the newest map. This map has probably the best loot available in terms of risk versus reward. If you can learn the Reserve map and learn where the loot is at, this map can provide you with an absolute load of money in a very short amount of time. Slush Puppy has a very good guide on how he farms Reserve to make absolute millions of dollars. I would advise you checking that out. So last but not least, the last map we're going to talk about is Shoreline. Shoreline is a very large circular map that has a very high populated loot area in the very center of it. Outside of what they call the resort in the center of the map, there isn't necessarily a whole lot of loot or a whole lot else that you'll do. The quests that bring you to Shoreline will generally bring you to the resort. I haven't played Shoreline very much this wipe. In previous wipes, it was the highest valued loot in the game. Now that we have Reserve, I would actually rank Reserve pretty high over Shoreline. But Shoreline used to just be the loot pinata map of the game. You would constantly run into very, very geared squads of 3 to 5 players. It just was not enjoyable with very close quarter combat against squads, because as a solo player, it's hard to be efficient with your movement and be able to reposition in long, narrow hallways. Basically makes it hard to fight. So we're about done here. One of the last things I do want to talk about is actually we're going to jump into show you the offline mode here. So if you want to get into the game and you want to experience each of the maps but don't want to risk losing loot or losing your gear, I would advise you to enable offline mode and try some offline raids of each map. You don't have to enable PvE. I would say just go into the map, maybe actually go in twice. The first time, don't enable PvE. Just go in, make some laps, get a better feeling for the maps, pick out the landmarks that are going to be able to show you the directions that you're going, where you're facing, where you need to go, and then go back in, maybe enable PvE, and try to actually get around. So that would be my advice, is to do some of these offline raids just to get a better feel for the map, and so you can know exactly where at least a couple of the extracts are, and be able to pick out some of the significant landmarks that are going to tell you where you're at in the map and what direction you need to be going. All right, and the last thing that I think I want to talk about here today is actually the insurance. So once you get past this mode where it allows you to select offline mode, it will bring you to the insurance screen. You have two people that you can insure through, Proper and the Therapist. Proper takes 24 to 36 hours to get back. Therapist takes 12 to 24 hours to get back on insurance. Proper is the one that I would always advise you to go with. It is cheaper. It's just a little bit longer wait. Most people only play a couple hours a day, especially if you're just picking up a new game. You're probably only going to play an hour or two a day, if even every day. Might be an every other day deal. Just do that. And I would also advise you to pretty much insure everything. There is a button here that it says insure all. The only thing that I do want to say here is if you have things in your container, any kind of key bars, keys, possibly other things that you don't necessarily want to insure, be sure to keep an eye out for that, because some things cost insane amounts of money to insure. And some things, like maybe if you forgot dog tags in your container, it'll insure those. Don't really want to do that. So it's just something to be aware of and keep an eye out for. So with the insurance, this allows you to get your equipment back. If you die in a raid and nobody else takes your equipment, you will get it back in insurance in the messenger within a couple of days. When you see this, there will be a pop-up down here in the bottom right that'll have a little paper clip, and it'll say 1, 2, 3, how many ever mails you're getting back. When you click that, it'll show up with something like this. It'll say, what's up? We got your loot. Here it is. And you'll see this insurance return. Unfortunately, I let this expire. I didn't get mine picked up, so it's gone. Once it's gone from this window, it's gone. You can't pick it up anymore. But you will get it back if nobody else extracts with it, which is very nice when you're starting out, because a lot of times you're going to be running cheaper, not so great guns. And most times people aren't going to pick those guns up because their space per value is not worth carrying over better valued loot. So that is going to be it for this, guys. If you have any more questions, don't be afraid to jump onto the Twitch, ask me there, shoot me a message on Discord, or leave it in the comments here. Maybe hit the subscribe button, put a like on the video. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see more of, or maybe what you didn't like. So with all that being said, thanks again, guys. Have a good one, and we'll catch you next time. Sorry, my kitty just jumped up on my lap. Yeah, who's a good kitty? Huh? Is you a good kitty? Hear her purring?